Hi everybody, I'm Taoka. I am a studio artist based out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. My show, Oh Well, opened in February at Gallery Urbane, and they've asked me to answer a couple questions here, so hopefully this provides a little bit more information about my studio practice, what I do, the things that I research. So for the past 5 or 6 years, I've worked primarily with plexiglass because of the innate qualities in the material. The transparency lent itself to my research, the things I was thinking about, and sort of what I wanted the work to do. And I prepared probably 12 to 14 paintings for my show in February on plexiglass, and around mid-September I decided that I wanted to do something new, that I really wanted to shake up my studio and really just sort of go for something completely different. I wanted to engage with the surface in a way that I hadn't been doing with the plexiglass. I wanted to acknowledge it in a different way. And I wanted to boil down my studio and my research to the sort of foundational questions that I ask myself. What are we looking at? How are we seeing? How do we understand what we're seeing? How can those things change and shift? And how we sort of negotiate that shift in understanding and how we can come to terms with what we're seeing. So the panel provided that point of departure, provided that drive to try something new and experiment and really push my work in a completely different way. All of my work begins as a digital rendering in Adobe Illustrator. And what this allows me to do is create multiple iterations of a single idea and determine the best course of action before I actually start making the work. Any painting of mine that you see or any work of mine that you see has upwards of 100 of these sketches. It allows me to determine color choices and really get a grasp on what I'm going to do when I actually begin painting. The files also act as files for the vinyl plotter that I use or the laser cutter that I use to give me the stencils that I need to make the work. When it actually comes to painting the work, I apply the vinyl stencils and the cardboard stencils and I airbrush through them. Depending on the way in which I do that, it gives me the crisp or fuzzy edge that you can see in the work in Oh Well. With this body of work, I was much more deliberate about the color choices I made and much more engaged with color theory and how the colors that I chose work together. I mined my direct surroundings, things that I was watching. So Anti-Mame, The Craft, Romy and Michele's high school reunion is always a big staple in my life. Smash Brothers, Call of Duty, and I pulled colors from those video games and those movies. And I wanted to use the colors to either accentuate the shapes in the work or allow them to sort of fade into the background and have the imagery work in a different way. So I think of the blue rectangle piece where it looks like a fuzzy rectangle sitting behind sort of this rectangle cutout. Or I think of the chartreuse and sort of hot salmon painting and how those colors work and how they mess with the middle ground, foreground, and background in a very different way. I'm lucky enough to have a group of artist friends who I can send images to and I can send sort of what I'm working with to them and they can give me their feedback. And my friend Ashley always says that I pick the ugliest colors, but I find a way to make them work. So that was in the back of my mind the entire time that I was making these paintings. I wanted the work to be garish. I wanted the work to be violently queer. I wanted the work to be in your face, but I wanted the colors to work together in a way that was undeniable. So even though there's this sort of gross orange and mint green that creates this really hard to look at image, it vibrates, that they still do something. They interact with each other in a different way. The work that I made for Oh Well has been really pivotal in my studio. It opened up a lot of doors and really changed the way that I think about my work and the way that I think about executing my work. It had a sort of looseness that my previous paintings haven't had, and I really enjoyed what those things were doing, and I really enjoyed working in that way. So I've been working on introducing impasto to replace the crisp edges or work in conjunction with the crisp edges to try to change the dimensionality of the work and engage with the fore, middle, and background in a very different way. I've also revisited the paintings that I had sketched out for OL that I ditched in September and have tried to execute them on paper in gouache as another way to sort of loosen up my hand and loosen up the studio. And what I want to do in this time period is not really focus on finishing any work, not really focus on making a high quality finished painting, but experiment and explore ideas and try things out that maybe I wouldn't have thought of. And I want this moment to be a little bit looser and a little bit more open to different ways of working and different ways of approaching my work.